Here tonight and looking through and enduring me for one more week with dinosaurs, talking about where they came from, where we can understand them, some of my experiences in my journey. But you see the title here, they don't come with directions. And I put that out there to just simply remind us all is that as much as we think we know about dinosaurs, they require an interpretation. That we don't dig any of them out of the ground and there's no little packet that comes that says, this animal died this time and this means by this method. It's a piece of information, valid and interesting, but it requires an interpretation. And of course, we've been talking the first few weeks about using the Bible as our basis for that interpretation. And we recognize that for the most part, an evolutionist is not going to use the Bible for that background and that basis. Now, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time just giving you a little bit of background of what we do in the summer. We just spent several weeks, my wife and I did, up in Glendive, Montana. There's a ministry up there called the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum. They also have 37 acres of ranch that dinosaur bones are on. People come to us and we give them a half day, full day, or whatever time period dig experience they would like. We had other creation ministries this past summer. We also had a youth group from Minnesota, and we just kind of get in and give them an opportunity to work through the bones, work through the sediment and the soil, and you just kind of just find different fragment pieces. There's really, this particular site is more of a sand and clay mixture. Now the idea, or the picture I want you to see here is this is more of like a cement mixer kind of feel, because we're not really finding a lot of what is called articulated, where you find several pieces of bone together in this specific area. It's almost like they were all dumped into some soil and water and all just kind of mixed together and then just laid out. And so we're finding alligator teeth, we're finding various kinds of dinosaurs, we're even finding figs. And so it's quite a broad range, crocodile teeth, quite a broad range, all found within a very close proximity. This is our dig site number 2. That's my wife, Martha, there. And as you can see, the hillside that we're kind of working into, we're just starting to work our way, trenching down. This was actually early when we got there. We probably went down another couple of feet further than where that picture's even showing. Can everybody see okay? Mm-hmm. And so we just keep working our way in and down. And a lot of my days were spent shoveling, which is always a fun experience of shoveling. You just can't get too much shoveling. Actually, I could get too much shoveling. But when we weren't shoveling, then we broke it up and kind of went with swinging the pickaxe. So I kept it fresh and light, and it's a variety here. But one of the things that we're working through here is we have to remove the overburden, because the bone layer typically is down closer to where my feet are. And so we have to take this overburden down so we can then go back deeper into this wall. And that's the gentleman that actually owns the property right there. And that's big old Tommy there after a full day of being tired and dirty. But it was a rich experience. You're tired at the end of each day, but you get up the next morning and looking forward to going through it again. This is one of the bones that I found and worked with on another person getting it out of the ground. This is the cervical neck rib of a triceratops. You got the triceratops with the 3 horns, and it has the big frill. And so right behind the frill is his neck. And there are a couple of small rib pieces called cervical neck ribs just right off of his neck vertebrae. And so we work on cleaning it up. And I put it in, this is a blasting machine. We don't use sand, but we use baking powder to blast the bone because they're so fragile. But you can go in there and just cleaning it up. This one might give you a good example. I'll let you even pass this around. But you'll feel a little bit of a smooth finish right here. And this one I blasted. And then you work on putting different kinds of sealer on it, kind of give it a finished look. That way you can get it ready for the museum to be presented. This is, Martha found this is a tendon, fossilized tendon. So we mentioned here with this vertebrae right here, some of the tendon will actually fossilize. That they're nice and thick enough that you can actually find them preserved. And this is a Triceratops frill that Martha's working on. And it was in rough shape. We use different combinations of adhesives to actually put this thing back together. Martha thought it would be best that I did not do it because she's better with puzzles than I am. And it's one of those things is because, you know, when you put a puzzle together, it doesn't really matter what order you put the pieces in, they're all going to fit. Well, this isn't the case with the Triceratops frill because of the way it's broken. And you've got to put it together in the right order. And the kind of glue we use is once it's glued, it's glued. And so it just takes a little thoughtfulness in working through that. This is site number 1 that we're working on, and you kind of get an idea of the landscape. And again, we're working more in kind of a sand, soil, light sediment, so the digging isn't usually difficult, but the bones probably aren't quite as well preserved. In Colorado, the bones are actually set more into rock. This is some of the teeth we found, and Martha turned out to be quite good with finding teeth, because these are little bitty teeth. Coming from the left, that's a fish tooth. Then you have what are some alligator teeth. Then the middle one, the big one there, is a T-Rex tooth. She found the bottom portion one particular day, and I found the other part of it the next day. So it was an interesting, it was a husband and wife experience. So we were able to work together on that. And then the two on the right there are Triceratops teeth. And so they're really interested to find, we're not finding any, or at least this summer, we didn't find any teeth set up into the jaw, but because the teeth actually come out fairly easily. Now, as far as what I want to do tonight is kind of walk you through a few key ideas. Some of it's going to be a refresher. We've covered some of this ground of setting the idea of how we look at creation, how we look at the context of dinosaurs in light of creation. We're going to look at the culture's impact on that, talk about fossils, and then get into a little bit of some living contemporaries, and then how the Bible would flesh out some ideas. Just kind of walking back through this, Gideon Mantell, back in the early part of the 1800s, he and his wife were out walking in England and found a tooth that looked like an iguana tooth, but it was much bigger. And so this, as it turned out, he named this animal Iguanodon, which means iguana tooth. And this is really the first recorded experience or encounter with dinosaur fossils. The term dinosaur came along in 1841. Sir Richard Owen coined the term. Dinosaur means terrible lizard. He was making a presentation to, I believe, a geological or paleontological society in 1841 and came up with this term. And so that's where we work from now. But dinosaurs really began to gain popularity, not just in Europe, but even here in the United States. As you move into the late 1800s, they have what is called the Bone Wars. Now, the Bone Wars was, you've got big, huge museums back east that wanted these huge dinosaur skeletons, obviously for financial gain, so they could get people to come to the museum. And so they would send these diggers, and Marsh and Cope were two of the key men, come out west, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and they would dig bones, but they did not like each other at all, and actually would destroy one of those bones, would reroute shipping train lines that would have one guy's bones on it. They would have somebody come along and reroute it so it wouldn't get back to where it needed to go. And so there was quite a bit of hostility, but this competition actually fostered a lot of discoveries. And a lot of the dinosaurs we know of today were found during this time period. Now, I mentioned this here with Charles Knight, 1905, because the idea of what does a living dinosaur look like really was born here with Charles Knight. Because up until this point, nobody had really been drawing these skeletons with skin on them. Now, I'm not suggesting that Charles Knight was right in all cases. But what I'm saying is it changed the idea of how we view these animals. Now, a couple of things I want you to note here is, look at the bottom one. Now, this was once called a Brontosaurus. Brontosaurus does not exist, never really did. I believe it was the Pittsburgh, the Carnegie Museum, wound up putting the wrong skull on the wrong body. They thought they had something new. Somebody comes along a little bit later and says, that's not right. So Brontosaurus got named, but he never really existed. But the idea of dinosaurs being slow, methodical reptiles was that early thought. And if you'll notice the bottom, you'll see the tail on the ground. Now that's significant in that that's how many people view dinosaurs, as this tail-dragging, cold-blooded idea of animals. That got shifted back probably about 20 or 30 years ago, and we see the more active perspective on dinosaurs today. Hollywood had to have their say in this process, and this is part of why I think we sit here today, and I don't know where you stand with your understanding of dinosaurs tonight, but I know that wherever you are, we're curious about them, but what do we do with them? And I believe that a lot of Christians struggle with trying to understand dinosaurs in a biblical context because they've been so presented to us in such an anti-biblical mindset. And I believe Hollywood has had a lot to do with this. That movies such as this present these animals in such a vicious context, present them in millions of years evolution paradigm, that when we come to the Bible, I've had countless people say, how do I understand dinosaurs in light of the Bible? Because the word dinosaur doesn't show up in Scripture, so what do I do with that? And I hope to work through that answer tonight. I call this research. Even though I look like one of the biggest little boys in the group, I was calling it research. About 5 years ago at the Bridgestone Arena, they had Walking with Dinosaurs, the live event. And so this T-Rex, as you can see the man right there, this T-Rex was walking on the arena floor. Now they created some type of little car for a man to drive, and the sound system and the little guy on the right there, the dinosaur on the right, is actually a man is inside of him walking around. It was, from a dinosaur perspective, pretty well done, but it was fraught with evolution millions of years. And there were 9 and 10-year-old little boys all over the place. Now, what I hear and see that is these boys are fascinated with dinosaurs, but they're also getting sold a story that is really anti-biblical, contradicts Scripture. In many respects, I was then fascinated with dinosaurs, but being led down the wrong path. And I just saw the boys in their reactions to all this. Now, fossils. As I mentioned, the idea of tags and information on dinosaur fossils just doesn't exist. How do we walk through that? Well, what we have are fossils today, and so as scientists, as paleontologists, we can come and dig up the bone out of the ground. As I showed you before, I can look at where the nerve went through the vertebrae here. We can talk about different aspects of what a dinosaur did and didn't do. But ultimately, his demise, why we find bones in the ground, is a matter of history. And ultimately, observable science is not going to factor in here. And why I encourage Christians, if we use the Bible as our lens for interpreting even dinosaurs, we'll find new insights that we never knew existed, new perspectives. Because I believe we've been taught something really quite contradictory. Jack Horner, one of the famous paleontologists and evolutionists in the world, says, paleontology is a historical science, a science based on circumstantial evidence after the fact. We can never reach hard and fast conclusions in our study of ancient plants and animals. These days, it's easy to go through school for a good many years, sometimes even through college, without ever hearing that some sciences are historical by nature inconclusive. And you understand what he's saying here? As passionate as he might be about evolution and dinosaurs as proof of evolution, he's recognizing that the study of dinosaurs is ultimately a historical science, and you really can't make conclusive claims. Now, as we look at dinosaur fossils, there's 3 things I want to point out to you that I think are really key, because what I'm trying to understand and what I want to help you understand is what I see when I look at dinosaur fossils as I see them buried in layers of rocks. layers of rocks that can only be put there by water, layers of rocks that I believe were laid there all by one key event. That I believe that bone beds actually are one of those key evidences of a cataclysmic event by water. And that soft tissue actually represents a young age of dinosaurs and not a millions of years age of dinosaurs. Dinosaur bones, in fact, actually 80% of the rock in the world is what we call sedimentary rock, which means that it was once individual particles all moved into its current location by water. Now, we will talk more about geology in a few weeks, but ultimately what we have here is 80% of the rocks in the world are sedimentary, and they are there because of water. Do we have a biblical event to explain that much water on the face of the earth? Yeah. Of course we do. And the Genesis flood actually gives us this good evidence. Now, some people have said rocks take millions of years to form. But if you've ever done a fence post, or put up a mailbox post, and you've opened up your bag of Quikrete, did it take millions of years for that Quikrete to set up? You still have wet Quikrete that you put together 20 years ago.